Enter if you dare this ghastly conversation of teens fraught with despair and recent lacerations. Final girl, chase after her, don't let her get away. But first, the Slumber Podcast Massacre with TNA.
Welcome to Slumber Podcast Massacre with TNA. That's Tim.
That's Andy.
And this is a podcast about horror. Every week, Tim and I are going to dive right in and look at a different film from the horror genre, from the well-revered classics down to that dusty and dirty gem at the back of your video store shelf. This week, Tim and I are going to be talking about the happy-go-lucky 2000 film, The Cell. Tim, my question for you, this is kind of a one or the other, because I think there's everybody is one of these two things. And which are you? Which subconscious are you? Cherry Blossom Petal Garden or Clawfoot Bathtub Dungeon?
Boy, that's just kind of perfectly illustrates all of it, doesn't it? I mean, that sums it all up. Man, I wish I was the first one. I really do. But no, sadly, I am very much the second one. And not because I think it
well,
sounds
now
any...
I'm talking subconscious, though.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right. Well, I mean, the closest access that I have to my subconscious is in dreams.
Sure.
And the dreams that I've been afflicted with can be really, really stylized and terrifying.
Yeah.
I don't.
You have night terrors, don't you? Or you used to, at least?
Well, it's called sleep paralysis with demonic visitation.
Okay.
Is literally what it's called. So yeah, no, they're absolutely horrifying, and I think I've talked about these a little bit before. I won't go on and on, but yeah, everybody's had feelings of waking up and feeling like they can't move or something, but this is a different. It's a different condition altogether. It's actually even a little bit more closely associated with like epilepsy, and because you are conscious. It's not a dream. You are physically conscious, but your mind is still in a dream state.
Right.
That's what makes it so horrifying. So you're literally split between the two. I guess you could say kind of like a hallucination, but I mean, I guess it is, but it's just your brain functioning on those two different levels at the same time. And it's not a nice dream that you're having on top of reality. It's a horrifying dream of a horrible, evil person in your room with you while you're awake.
Wow.
Yeah, it's scary as hell. And when I used to have them more often in I'd say my 20s, I would get up from bed and immediately just slam like 2 or 3 beers just to like try and like stunt my nervous system, my central nervous system, and quiet it down. So yeah, I wish I was the first one. But how about you? Do you have pleasant dreams?
To be honest, I don't remember a lot of my dreams. I wouldn't say they're horrific. They're odd, to be sure. The things never go my way in my dreams, but I can't say I've never, I've had my share of bad dreams, but nothing, no sleep paralysis, that's for sure. But yeah, my dreams are usually like, they're, when I tell my dreams, I'm the putz in them, or something dumb has happened to me. The big one in my house, and maybe this is TMI, but I should have let you interrupt me there. Anyway, I had this one that's a huge joke where I was with a girl, we're making out, and I go to lift up her shirt to reveal she is a robot, like a full circuitry and gears. And like, that's when I'm like, wait, what? And then I wake up. Like those are my types of dreams. So see, I don't know what kind of subconscious I've got.
See, I was hoping that maybe just like, you said things don't go your way. Like maybe you have these like horrific dreams, but you're such a badass that that's how you describe it. Like you're being swallowed by some giant demon, and you're like, boy, today isn't my day.
Yeah,
You know?
Mondays.
But you know what though? You probably don't. You have kind of a. You're a bit of a night owl, aren't you? You don't have a real set sleep schedule because that's gonna mess.
No.
That's gonna make you not remember your dreams for shit.
Yeah, I like sleeping. It's just difficult for me to get to sleep. So, but I don't have much trouble getting up in the morning. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not a lot of sleep. I'm trying to be better about that, but what are you gonna do?
Well,
But
if you don't remember what happens in your subconscious, at least you've got this movie to look at.
what a segue.
Yeah, how about that? Nice and smooth as silk. Because boy, this movie is pretty to look at, and that's on several different levels.
Yeah. And then it's The Cell from 2000, directed by Tarsem Singh. This movie had a budget of 33 million. Big hit, 104 mil. This movie pulled in, and I remember it because it was like the big draw for me at the time was this was Vince Vaughn's like, oh, serious Vince Vaughn. Like, I love Swingers and what other crap he did. Was Made. I don't know. Remember if Made was before this or not, but still, loved the Vince Vaughn at the time. So this was like, ooh, and it looked awesome. J-Lo was really exploding. And as a 24-year-old man, I enjoyed her creative endeavors.
You were also exploding. Right.
Yes.
Right. No, you're right. I mean, it was exciting, but you know what? And of course we'll get into this later. But you know what's so crazy about this movie? One of the most striking things about it, just in relation to what you just said, is that yes, it was this huge hit, and yes, it made all this money. But boy, people don't really talk about this movie.
Forgotten movie. Yeah, totally forgotten.
I'm not even sure that they talked about it a lot when it came out. Obviously people saw it, but it wasn't like a summer blockbuster.
Right.
It was obviously a big movie that was very well attended, and I remember people talking about it, but they weren't sort of it didn't have a giant buzz.
Yeah. Good buzz there. Gonna remind everyone we're on the Zuma studio. Anyway, we got some audio issues, but and I do agree with you, and I think the problem that this movie has is while visually stunning and it is the draw and they nail that part of it, nothing really happens. Like the story itself is so basic, and the visuals don't play a part in the plot of the movie. So they're like two separate things. The plot is just a cookie cutter, gotta find a girl, we found the girl. Like that's it. But the visuals add so much more. But it's just, if you took out those visuals, what a boring fucking movie this would be.
So tell me the story of this movie.
Oh, yeah, let's do Nan Sum. And I'm trying something new. I kind of typed it out because I got an earful for my Hereditary's Nan Sum. Not good enough. Like not even a playful like I still don't understand. It was like I don't get it. And you said you weren't going to spoil, and then you are spoiling. Like I don't understand what you're doing. Like she was pissed off. So I actually tried to type it out. Another big one. Here's what I got. Okay, here's Nan Sum. After a serial killer is captured, he slips into a coma before he can reveal where his latest victim is being held. The FBI turns to child psychologist Catherine Dean and her experimental virtual reality treatment where she can enter the mind of the patient. In a race against time, she must navigate his twisted mind to uncover his victim's location. There we go. Happy, honey? Jesus.
Wow, that sounds like the back of a movie box right there.
It's not.
Approximately 90 minutes.
Yeah. Copyright 1980.
No, that's it. That's it. And yeah, as far as movies go, And as far as especially the movies that we talk about, which so oftentimes are these labors of love or these difficult projects that took years and years to see the light of day. Um, when you have, like you're talking about, you got Vince Vaughn, who was, really on a nice streak, really likable, kind of appealed to a lot of different people at that time. And then you've got J Lo. If you've got those two ingredients in whatever you're mixing up, you don't have to fight too hard to pull this thing out of the oven. I mean,
No.
it's not a lot of red tape once you have those just shoe-in qualities to your film. So not a lot of like real tumultuous backstory on how this thing came to be.
Yeah, no. Yeah, as you I'm going to steal what you said earlier, but it was no, you say it. What did you say? I can't even remember what it was specifically now.
I said that yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, everything went so smoothly with this production when you've got big names like Vince Vaughn and J Lo that it was all wrapped up in production heaven,
Yeah, exactly.
uh, as opposed to the
Yeah,
classic
there
term
was
production
nothing. I
hell.
expected something about they were over budget, or they were had this his first time director, so like no issues there. This was one of like J Lo's. It was her 12th movie, but still very early in her movie career. I mean, this is 2000, and her big hit was uh
Did you say 12th movie?
yes, it was her 12th movie.
What?
Probably not her 12th headlining a movie or starring in it, but the 12th movie she had been in. Yes.
Wow.
Now, I'm only going off of that's her saying that because she actually just released a video a month ago, unbeknownst to us when we decided to do this, because this is a viewer recommend we're doing, or a listener recommend. But yeah, she was like, this is my 12th movie and it's been 20 years. So this was 20 years ago, last August. Um, but yeah, she it was her 12th movie, but she was attached, like she was in it from the beginning, and like before they even had a director signed on or anything. So yeah, it was just, I don't know, there was no drama in this movie,
Yeah. And
which is
that's great.
fine.
Yeah.
Sometimes that happens. Sometimes they just make a fucking movie because that's their job.
Right. Right.
Sometimes
And
they make your burger right.
right. Yeah, and they don't think about it a whole lot,
No.
I mean, it just gets done, and thankfully this movie did get made, and very thankfully did it have J Lo in it, and I genuinely am being serious when I say for a multitude of reasons because she, I mean, if you want to talk about looks, if you want to talk about talent, if you want to talk about there's just something specific to her brand of beauty that fits this movie so well. I mean, she looks like a saint, like literally like a prayer candle. I mean, she's
Yeah.
stunning.
Well, yeah, they pretty much try and make her look like that at the end.
Right, right. But well, let's talk a little bit about that that director. Now, I don't know much about him other than he was a music video director prior to this. But what I think is kind of makes perfect sense that he would be the director is the specific time that he was directing music videos and the style with which he directed, because the 90s had a very specific visual look to them as far as music videos go. And it was kind of like that. It was kind of like a very surrealistic. And you had music video directors like Samuel Bayer, who like had to insert an elderly person into his videos, like no matter what it was. There was a lot of blurry focus. There was a lot of just symbolic
Are you
imagery.
just talking about one Tool video, or are you talking in general?
Well, I mean, I guess yeah, pretty much because that encapsulates all of them. But no, it's like this director in particular directed "Losing My Religion," which is very symbolic. There's nothing really linear about it. There's kind of dreamlike images, and
It won Best Video that year.
yeah, and it's cool. I mean,
Yeah,
especially for the time, it's very non-linear. It's very, like I said, kind of dreamlike, and
I think that
they,
video was crucial in kind of the resurgence of REM at that time. Like that kind of helped them bridge from indie college band into a little more mainstream.
Absolutely.
And
I
the
would agree
video
with
is a
that 1,000%.
huge part of it.
I would agree with that 1,000%. And what it looks like to me, which is why it's such a perfect bridge to this film, is that when you watch that video or a lot of videos of that time, there, rather than it being like camera footage recording a band doing their thing, it really gives the impression more of like giving life to still paintings. It looks like you take a sort of a surrealistic painting and put it into motion. You
Yeah,
know,
sure.
you have these warm saturated lights and these strong textures. You don't just have a camera on a guy in a room. You've got a camera on a guy in a room with a view out the back of the room into some sort of beautiful looking landscape. Like it was textured and layered and
Yeah.
nuanced in the way
Picture
that
of milk on the table.
right. I mean, yeah, just something that is, you know, other than sort of like the vanity, you know, sort of pieces that were put together for music videos in the 80s, which is, you know, let's just show the band in black and white backstage all hot and sweaty after the show and
Yep.
going through the tough times of being a rock and roll star, you know. It was more creative than that. And that visual eye of his desire to put what looks like paintings onto a moving image, it just fits perfectly into this film because we're talking about people entering each other's subconsciouses. So, yeah, I mean, he's the perfect guy for it because he's really good at it.
Yeah.
Um,
It was
and the movie is
obvious
successful.
that he had a very specific vision. And there, I've read a couple interviews where, um, mainly Jennifer Lopez talks about how he was just everything they were doing. He knew exactly what was going on. And this was during the time, we're just getting into CGI, so a lot of it is this is the start of you're just in a sound state, like an empty room, and over here is this thing react to that, and over here is this thing react to that, which now is probably so you learn to do that as you're becoming an actor, but this was almost one of the first times where, but to still have that vision and be like, I know exactly what this is going to look like, and to be able to pull it off is, I think, a big achievement.
And that's why I think that you're exactly right, and I think that it was very purposeful. That what you said earlier about describing the movie almost in two separate pieces, to where the when we're inside the subconscious of whomever we're inside of, these lush, colorful, saturated images, and then outside of that, it's very minimalist and very linear and just very basic. And even the color palette when we're in, you know, quote unquote, in real life in this movie is a really muted palette.
Yeah.
And I think that has to have been done purposely, that they, if nothing else, it punches up the visuals for when they are in the subconscious. But I will say, even though those moments outside of somebody's subconscious in real life, even though those might be sort of muted and they might seem sort of mundane, they're also still really pretty to look at. Like he doesn't just have a building in the middle of nowhere. That's just basic looking. His building in the middle of nowhere has like weathered primary colors that are sort of stripping away, and it's still something that's interesting to look at.
Yeah.
So it's visually great all the way around. It's just two different flavors.
He's got a very cool layer.
Yeah, he does.
As far as evil layers go.
Right. Um, true. That's very true. Um, but
Sorry.
it's a nice play on words there. I like it. Um, so let's talk a little bit about this cast, because it's not only do you have some really great, huge stars and very well respected people, you also have an absolute goddamn Sears catalog of
Oh,
character actors.
yes. Yeah, this is the who's who of like supporting character actors of their time. Dylan Baker, Who's the guy with the eyes?
That
Pruitt
is,
Taylor Vince.
yes.
Yes, from he was in Jacob's Ladder was the movie that got the director. He saw him in Jacob's Ladder, and he does something. He's got an eye twitch that he
Yeah,
likes to incorporate when he can, which they wanted to do in this movie, and the studio was like, nah, cut it out.
yeah. It's. I even have it written down, but you know what? I can't read my writing right now, so you know. I guess I don't have the best eyes either.
Perfect.
We're glass houses here. So, but no, recognizable. The thing is, we could pretend that we're smart and list off all the names of these character actors one by one by one, because literally, when I can, for those who haven't researched a lot of movies, usually if you're looking at a list of actors from a film, you might have a handful that have their own Wikipedia page or their own pages dedicated to them. In this movie, when you look at the cast, it's like 20 of them. Like
Yeah.
literally, they all, even if the names aren't recognizable, they certainly have a ton of credits to them, and some of them went on to be actually pretty famous. But speaking to our main cast here,
Oh,
yeah,
and Peter Sarsgaard, who's uncredited. Which,
yeah,
which when I was rewatching this, I was like, oh, I don't remember him being in here, and then was waiting for all these other scenes with the boyfriend that never came, and I was like,
right.
oh wait, he's only like this one profile shot, and that's all the Peter Sarsgaard you get.
Right. Well, you get a lot more of him in subsequent films, so to speak. But but yeah,
Bring your dick.
that's our new that's our podcast catchphrase right
Yeah.
there. Um, so no, you got Vince Vaughn. I mean, okay, so Vince Vaughn, super likable guy, really atypical role for him, like you mentioned. I think he plays it wonderfully. I even have some questions for you later on about a very specific scene that he made a really interesting choice in how he played it that I want to get your thoughts on. But he does a really great job. What I thought was interesting, which I found out in the research, was that his character was supposed to be a real prick,
Yeah.
like a
He's
real
an asshole.
abrasive asshole. Yeah, and I'm really glad that they kind of tweaked and sculpted the performance a little bit in the editing room, because while he comes across as maybe impatient or really driven, I don't think he comes across as anything more than maybe a little aloof,
Yeah. But I think
from
the
time to time.
problem that they probably didn't think about was, I mean, he gained popularity as an asshole. Like his character was a charming asshole in Swingers. He was a
Right.
huge asshole, but he was funny and you liked him. But if you take away the charm and you just have abrasive asshole, no one surprisingly, no one likes that guy.
Right, right, yeah. And the guy's like 7 feet tall, and yeah, I
Right.
mean, it's not like he's some like cute little squat little lovable dude. Like, yeah, when you take away that charm, he can be imposing or prickish. But
Yeah.
thankfully, they crafted it into something that gave us just what we needed, and not a whole lot more. And I'm okay with that. That actually kind of is one of my favorite things about this movie, that we'll talk about a little bit after. Sweet J Lo. Okay, we have to mention Jennifer Lopez in this. My favorite part about Jennifer Lopez being in this movie is that the movie didn't feel to me like it had to throw it in my face that Jennifer Lopez was in this movie.
Yes.
You usually when you have a big star, man, they got to shove it down your throat, and they got to give them all this dramatic lighting and close-ups and just really
Well,
kind
I
of.
mean, to be fair, they do give us the one thing that you need in a Jennifer Lopez movie, and it
Oh
is
yes,
one shot where she's in some very high cut underwear.
she is. And the funny
And
thing is,
also, I will say, because at the very beginning of this movie, we should say during this procedure, they are like fully suspended in these outfits, and I was like, oh no way, like Jennifer Lopez got in that and like hung from that suit. And as it's like panning back, then there's nothing under them, and you just see the curve of the rump, and I was like, oh no, okay, it probably was her. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty
There's no mistaking this
recognizable.
silhouette.
No, and it's okay to talk about because Lord knows, I mean,
She
our
had it
whole
insured, man. You have to,
our whole universe has
there was a
been
decade that is built around Jennifer
yeah.
Lopez's posterior.
Absolutely. And it's kind of the funny thing is the shot of it isn't even like gratuitous. It's just that the ass is so impressive and it's so big and out there that you'd have to have her in complete darkness to hide
Yes.
that ass.
Yeah.
And
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 that shot, the director Tarsem did say he was, and I'll be honest, I don't remember what was being said in the background. But she's watching TV. He's like, "We've got like important information going on," and I realize now that was a bad time to do it because no one's paying attention to what's being said on the television. But I think it is because that shot's so benign. It's like,
yeah.
all right, whatever, you know.
And she's just opening her fridge. She's in her underwear and a shirt, and she's opening her fridge. What's the big deal, other
Yeah.
than that amazing ass,
Yes.
But yeah. So, but even now that we've said that, moving beyond it, just because we're intellectuals here, that her performance is outstanding. It's a subtle performance, and I don't think that she has an easy character to nail down. Like her character is obviously an educated person, but she's also somebody that has to reverberate with a certain kindness and just compassion, like a
Yeah.
really tangible compassion. And she just, I believe her as a smart person. I believe her as a compassionate person, and I think that she's wonderful. And not only that, but just talking to other aspects of her physical self, she has just a beautiful face, and it's a face that is made for lush, like surrealistic, dreamlike sequences.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. When she's captured and is now in her like Queen Demon regalia. Like what that image is awesome. That's one of my
oh, it's
favorite
great.
images.
Like if you throw like a Sarah Jessica Parker in that, it's like, no, I'm just no,
It's
no,
not
not
working.
not
Nope.
so much. No, like a Laura Dern, just looking kind of like
I'd be willing to see what the specs of
You
that
like
are.
Laura Dern?
Oh yes, sir.
Really?
Yeah.
No.
You
Okay.
don't like
Are we
Laura
talking?
Dern?
Do you know who Laura Dern? I mean,
Of
are we
course
talking
I
like?
know who Laura Dern is.
I always thought she looked a little like, kind of like Peyton Manning, like they were in the microwave for like
Oh
30 seconds.
man.
Like
She's
just a
just
little
tall, all
droopy.
right? She's
Just a little
tall.
droopy.
I mean, have you
Um,
seen Bruce Dern? It's unavoidable.
true. Good point. Good point. No, I love her. I think she's great. Um, and so no, so J Lo's great, and then you've got Vincent
Yeah.
D'Onofrio, which
We've gone
man,
27 minutes now without
right?
gooing
And
all over, exploding ourselves over Vincent D'Onofrio.
yes, and he was, he's one of those guys that is really a character actor at heart, but certainly has played leading men and can be a leading man. But he does have the nuance to his performances and the creativity to his performances to fit the bill here perfectly. And the director was saying just that he loved what D'Onofrio was doing right from the get-go. I think even from the first day of shooting, or maybe it was the auditions, just the movements, the sounds, the breathing. Like
Yeah.
this is an actor that was using an incredible amount of technique
He's
going into
far
this.
less interesting as the serial killer than he is as the King Demon or whatever he's called. King, I forget the character name. King something or other. What do they call him?
Well, it's not King Payman.
King Starger.
Yeah,
Starger.
there he is. Yeah,
Yes,
his last
Carl
name.
Starger is his name.
Yeah,
So yeah, King Starger is kind of the demon manifestation that's controlling him. That's the very powerful force, mental
yeah,
force in him. But yeah, all his stuff as that. There's that one. He does this as when it's towards the end. Vince Vaughn's come in to
yeah,
his mind as well, and she wants to rescue. There's the boy version of him inside his mind, and she wants to rescue him, and King Starger comes out and he's doing this weird like noodle arm like run towards him, but it doesn't look silly. Like it looks menacing, but his costume has these like puffed ridges, so it almost looks like his arms are longer than they should be, and he does this
Right.
weird like looping run toward him and scoop him up. Ah, it's so fucking good.
Yeah. And it really is, it really does sell a nightmarish vibe, like the creepy sort of unnatural things that you would see in a nightmare or someone's subconscious. So yeah, we get these amazing performances by all of the cast. But what I wanted to really get into now, just real quick, is what I've hit on a little bit earlier. Is that the thing that I love about this movie is that it does not really give you anything more than what you need, and I love that about it. Look at this. I mean, this is the best example. You've got a movie that is 100,000% hinged on your believing that there is a technology that allows people to go into other people's subconscious. If you don't buy that, then you don't buy this movie at all.
Yeah.
And what's so funny is that they spend like no time explaining this technology, which
Yeah.
is great. I love that. I love that we didn't get 20 minutes of them feeling like they have to explain to us who invented this
Yeah,
and
how it works, the very
how it works.
specific. You're right.
Right.
I didn't even think about that, and maybe that's why I didn't think about it, because there isn't. It's just like it works. And this is it, and you have to go along with it.
Right. It's a term that all of us who have ever taken, film classes or theater classes, a suspension of disbelief, where you're setting aside your need to have all the facts or believability in something. It's presented in such a way that you say, okay, I'll go with that, so
Yeah.
I can enjoy it.
There's
And
no
they,
like, oh, if her photon levels get above 125, that could cause
right.
permanent brain cancer. I mean, there is a bit like, kind of like that, but it's immediate in the moment. It hasn't been some dumb device they've set up early. They're just like, oh, something's going on wrong right now, and we need to fix it.
Yeah, we don't have like some bumbling, nerdy, like intellectual scientist guy, some character that would be in like 99 out of 100 other movies like this,
Right.
if they were made the traditional way. So that's great.
Hanging away on the typewriter, like I gotta get through the mainframe.
Yeah, like super protective of the equipment,
Yeah.
like doesn't want anybody else to touch it.
He's like battling King Stargar in the mind. It's one of those stupid fucking things.
Yeah, and so thankfully we don't have any of that. Yeah, and the other, and I'm going to say this because I'm even more stunned by this movie's willingness. Fucking brass balls. It takes the hugest balls for a Hollywood movie to do what I'm about to say, and that is that they have one of the biggest female stars at that time with one of the most talked about and buzzed male stars in playing, assumingly heterosexual roles.
I know
in
exactly
this
what
film.
you're gonna say. Yep, keep
And
going.
they did not infuse a relationship, a
No.
romantic
They have a
storyline.
handshake at the end.
Oh my God, it's so good. It's
Yeah.
so good that because it was so unnecessary.
They still do get to kiss
Yeah,
under duress, or it's under certain
right.
not duress, but she's under the spell of King. Why can I not remember his name? The King. I'm just gonna
Starger?
call him the King. Starger.
The King.
It's such a
Yeah.
dumb. It's a dumb name. I don't like the name.
The
Change the
King.
name. New name.
Yeah.
We'll just call
But,
him
yeah.
the King.
So
But even then, Vince Vaughn's like, I don't have time for this right now.
right, yeah. I mean, it's just something that, God, I was thinking. There was even a scene, and it turns out that it's one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie, where I thought, okay, this is a scene. They're sitting outside together. They're outside of the center where they perform this exercise of going into the subconscious. And I'm like, okay, here we go. This is where they're going to start to flirt with each other, and something they're going to go home and bang or whatever. But I'm going to jump right into this because I'll kick myself if I forget to ask you. In this particular scene that I'm talking about, where they finally have a chance to just sit and talk,
Yeah.
There is some discussion of Vince Vaughn's background as a being a former attorney, and then becoming, and kind of like his reasons for wanting to go into law enforcement, because he wanted to actually catching the bad guys instead of just seeing them in a courtroom. And so we get some interesting backstory there. And he's talking with Jennifer Lopez, who has a natural great listening disposition, because she's a therapist. So let me ask you this: there is a moment where Vince Vaughn is talking about kind of like the philosophy of if it's okay to not fully punish or not kill people that have committed these heinous crimes. And he makes mention of the fact that this one guy that he mentions, who was somebody that he was involved with in a case years ago, he makes mention of the fact that there are people who have experienced 100 times worse than what that guy went through, because Jennifer Lopez is quick to make the point that, well, didn't that child molester guy, wasn't it found out that he was molested himself? And
Right.
this is where Vince Vaughn comes in and says, there are people who have gone through 100 times worse what he went through. And she said, are you sure? And when he responds, I'm sure, or whatever the line is,
Right.
it almost, did you for a
He had
second?
his own thing.
Yes.
Well, and sure.
Did
Go
you
ahead. Go
feel
ahead.
like that? Did you feel like that's what they were trying to imply in that scene? That maybe Vince Vaughn himself had gone through some sort of abuse?
I think so. I'm gonna be honest. I vaguely remember that part, so it wasn't like it didn't hit me. But you explaining it, yes, like I'm certain that's what it is, and that is something to think about. Two people can go through trauma, and one person can use it to better their life, and one it kind of consumes someone else. There's let me get a little nerdy here. There's a cool Batman spin-off alternate universe thing where instead of Bruce's parents dying and he becomes the Batman, Bruce gets shot and it drives the mom crazy and she becomes the Joker and
Oh,
the dad becomes the Batman, uses it to stop crime. So
that's awesome.
yeah, it's very cool. It's a cool story. I think it's like part of the Flashpoint series. I could be. I'm not really hip to my current comic stuff. Anyway, um, but yes. So yes, that I mean, I guess there is an argument like, well, people can experience tragedy and not become murderers, but there are people that do. And it's not like he was, he was also schizophrenic. So
Right.
not a lot of schizophrenics going on to become lawyers,
Right. Good
or
point.
to do the right thing. And he probably did not have the health care necessary to help him. So as this disease just eats away at his inside, something like that's going to happen to where you finally say, the only way I can enjoy life is by masturbating above a dead body while suspended by rings sutured through my back. Like, that's it.
Well, I appreciate you sharing those details of your personal life.
I had a rough childhood, Tim. I had a rough childhood.
No, yeah, that is one hell of a scene right there. But no, yeah, I think that I think that what we're getting at here is one of the more interesting points, and I'm just going to make a pretty big assumption here, but I think when we were talking at the very beginning of this about this movie kind of maybe being a little bit forgotten as years went by, it's kind of what you were just talking about that made me think that maybe the reason why this movie isn't so remembered is that because there isn't a clear-cut bad guy. When you're watching Friday the 13th, Jason is this mindless killer. So you're afraid of him or you hate him the way that people hate great white sharks. Like it's
Yeah.
not their fault, but you still kind of hate them because they're so vicious. Or Freddy Krueger, who was an awful, horrible human being when he was alive, and even worse after he died. So there's a clear-cut bad guy to sink your teeth into and say, I'm going to root against that guy because he's awful. But this movie doesn't serve that up to the viewer. So maybe that, I don't know, maybe
I
people
just
just didn't
don't think
latch
it's.
onto it.
I don't think it's rewatchable. It's cool to look at once,
Uh-huh.
but also a lot of those visuals you get through the marketing or the trailer or whatever. But all right, saying you never saw any of this, watching it the first time, you're like, wow, cool, because a lot of this is computer generated, and uh, we'll tangent that real quick, but I'll just finish that. It's like I said before, the story is just kind of whatever. Like there's no, even like the way they catch the where they when they find the girl has not a lot to do with the dream world, and Jennifer Lopez plays no part in it at all. Like that, I kind of thought they did her dirty on that, where she was tasked to do a job, and then Vince Vaughn accidentally like finds something as he goes in, of course, to rescue her. Like she's now a damsel in distress and doesn't solve the mystery at all.
Well, that's a good point, and I did not think about that at all. But you are 1,000% right about that. Yeah, and it becomes such a minor detail that actually solves it. You're right.
Yeah,
Um,
which let's dive into it because I was like, give come on, this one is in a movie about going into someone's subconscious. Way more believable than how they fucking crack this case. Because Vince Vaughn sees this symbol right on the what he sees this water tank because Vincent D'Onofrio, the king, drowns his victims, but not while he's there. He videotapes it, and they're in these big tanks, and it's releasing water in, and so that's the race against the clock because they've got to find it before the water fills up. So so they've gone to the guy's house, right? They found Vincent D'Onofrio in the beginning of the movie. They track him down because he gets sloppy, and they find his masturbating equipment, right? So in the vision, he sees this symbol on the water tank, and he gets out and he calls the guy from Breaking Bad, another great character actor. I can't remember his name at all right now. Um, not important. Dean Norris? I don't remember. I can't remember his name. Anyway, um, and he's like, "Oh, hey, that huge, unique piece of equipment we found at his house? Look at that. Is that made by someone?" And he's like, yeah, by Carver Industrial." And then he's like, "Hey, find out what you can about this giant masturbation machine that we haven't looked into yet. Find out about this machine." And they easily are then like, "Oh yeah, it was sold to this one guy, and then moved here, and they hired this guy to close it down." Like they have not they've got this machine sitting in like in his basement. That's not something you've looked into at all.
right. No, that's true, and it does feel a little bit like a quick wrap up to
Oh,
finding her. And but I will say this, I will just contest you a little bit on the fact, like when you say that the story is really basic. I agree with what you're saying. I mean that part I'm not gonna argue. I do think that it's worth saying, though, that there is a little bit of unconventionality in that you have a bad guy who, within the first third of the movie, is already rendered unconscious because he slips into a schizophrenic coma.
sure.
So instead of the whole movie being about chasing down the bad guy and finding him, he's already out of the picture physically, sort of. And now it
Yeah, but
becomes
they're
a
just
movie
chasing
about.
him down mentally, though. They're still
Oh,
doing it.
yeah, yeah, no, yeah,
They
no, you're
they
right. You're
flip it
right.
a little bit,
Yeah,
but
yeah, it's a
again,
little.
it's not enough to be like, oh, in this one they're chasing him down in his mind. I have to watch that 10 times. It's
No,
not.
you're right. The repeat viewings aren't overly necessary. I enjoyed the repeat viewing, but only because it had been literally 20 years since I had seen it. So from that angle, it was good. Now, you mentioned the effects. Now, I'm going to say I was pleasantly surprised when I rewatched this movie, because I was really afraid that I was going to see. I remember there being a lot of effects. Everybody knows that when you talk about The Cell. And I was really worried that it was just going to look bubbly and cartoony and just ridiculous the way that early CGI looks to us now. But what I was so impressed to see was that a huge chunk of those effects actually are brought to us on behalf of Aiko Ishioka, the costume designer.
Flawless.
And that actually so many of the effects are actually very practical, meaning they're done not with any sort of computer aid or camera editing, that they're actually just done on the set. And so, with various wild costumes or props or that sort of thing. So that part was really cool. However, when we do see the effects rear their ugly head, it is a little
bad.
It's a little cringy. Yeah.
Well, see, yeah, because it's like rewatching it, I was like the first time you see the king demon, it's after because when Jennifer Lopez goes into Vinny D's head. First, she sees like all his former victims, and they're kind of these weird dolls. Though that was all super cool and creepy, like in these cells. Then there's like a bodybuilder one, which I was reading about, because she's got some curves on her, and they were like, "Oh, we wanted her to be a bodybuilder, but we found out female bodybuilders have small breasts, so we gave her large prosthetics." So
Yes.
she just has these, and they are cartoonishly
Right.
are enormous. But anyway, so this bodybuilder like brings her into the room, and he gets up, and this is a huge visual from the movie that most people remember. And as he like walks down, he's got these two long flowing purple drapes attached to his back that then like wrap around the room. But as he walks forward, they come down off the wall and whip around the corners. And looking at it even now, I was like, really good practical effect. Like I thought those were real curtains. And it wasn't. It was computer generated. But then at the same time, like when Vince Vaughn goes in to rescue her, you get the bubbly T1000 liquid metal. Like some of it's so bad, like
Yeah.
the worst.
You know what's funny
But even
too
in that
is
sequence, there's some cool visual effects, like this, like 2001 effects happening, and then bubble worms. I don't get it.
the one thing that I thought was funny. I don't know if you saw this in your research too, but the director was talking about the effects, the computer effects in general. And there's a really interesting scene and a really interesting choice visually where it's, I guess you would call it for the most part, a close-up on two actors. And when they're talking, as the scene is going on, there's sort of this filigree, this kind of like vein, like a viney type filigree that's sort of in motion, almost sort of undetectably happening in the scene, and it's framing them in these sort of like gilded filigree flowers and vines that go around them.
And at the end when she pulls him into her mind, right? Yeah.
Right. And the thing is, the director was saying that by the time he was inserting that, because he really wanted it, he thought it was going to look cool, that like literally it was a collective like gasp from the rest of the crew, like, you are fucking killing me with this shit, like this just looks ridiculous. But actually that looked halfway cool. I mean, I thought it was kind of neat.
Yeah, it was an odd effect. I didn't know if it was necessary. I mean, you had enough with the lighting, I think, but then to add these creeping flowers just around the border of it, because then it took it out, because it's like, oh, now I'm defining the edge of my shot,
Right.
It was. I felt that was odd.
Now here's something that was kind of cool though. If we talk about practical effects, this is as practical or huge as it gets. Was that the director made the really wise choice of saying, if you're going to go into someone's subconscious, you want it to appear limitless in the way that a subconscious landscape would be. So he didn't want to limit it, even though he has these amazing sets and these amazing like dungeon qualities to the inside of the king's mind. He's was adamant about we need to film this scene. We need to have our opening scene in Nambia, which is that
Namibia.
yeah,
Namibia.
is that it?
Yeah.
My geography is horrible.
No, it's all right. Why,
And
why do you have to know what Namibia is? It's fine.
is that in Africa?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Yeah, it's like a
so
national park in Namibia that they filmed that
Namibia.
opening shot, right?
I guess
Am I
yeah,
doing
yeah,
it
it is.
wrong?
Yeah, and
Listen,
it was actually a place where the director would apparently visit as a kid. That he really liked. So, but it's amazing because it's such a great choice because it is such a vast, huge, wide landscape, and it's so beautiful and barren. It almost looks like another world.
yeah.
So
I did
that
read
was
that where he was like, people will look at this and be like, "You made that up. Like, no place looks like that." And he's like, "No, this, we didn't do anything to this."
right, right. And so yeah, there was some really for across the board. While there were a couple cringy spots here and there, I was thrilled to see that the visuals did hold up over
I
time.
will say something I read, and again, I wish I could have heard the commentary because apparently on the commentary he talks about because when they cast the victim who drowns, they asked her, they were like, "Can you swim?" And she's like, yeah, yeah, sure." And she's like, I was actually a lifeguard for a short time. They were like, "Cool." And then as they get to the part where they're submerging her in water, she could not go underwater without holding her nose. And they were like,
Yeah,
"Are you fucking kidding me right now?" And apparently during the commentary, he keeps coming back onto it, just like, "Can you believe, like, you don't say, 'Oh yeah, I can make a sandwich. Actually, I was a chef before.' No, no, you don't say that you are the best at this job if you can't do that job.
right. And
Can't
even
even go underwater."
the most basic ways. Like, and the thing was, and you're right. That guy is fucking livid about that to this day. And
He's
what's
like, the first girl who died, she was great. I wish I would have cast her in this part.
right, and the thing is, I guess the guy's got a legitimate claim because, or I mean, his indignation is warranted because they were too far into shooting other scenes to recast this actress,
Yeah.
and they were every film has you don't have forever to make these things. You got to crank them out on a schedule, and they literally did not have enough time to scrap her, recast her, and reshoot the scenes. So they had to go with her. And really, I mean, I'm sure we probably all would have lied and said that we could swim if we were in the same spot. But literally, that's fucking with a lot of people's lives. A
Oh
lot of
yeah.
crew, all of the crew on the movie, the whole production schedule. It really, really messed him up. And yeah, that guy has not let that go after 20 years.
No.
Um, but at the same time, I did like that actress, and
Yeah.
there are some interesting choices that are really unsettling, but really poignant and effective for whatever reason. And the only other movie that I know that I can think of that used this a lot was Saving Private Ryan, but it's really affecting when somebody is in a movie and they are about to die and they're fearing for their life and they literally think they're going to die, that even if they're a grown adult, that they call out to their mother or father. Like, it's really affecting, and it's done a couple of times in this movie. And it's really, if you're a parent, or even if you're just a decent human being, it's gut wrenching to think about of that happening.
Yeah.
Somebody just being in such peril that they would resort back to like a childhood mind frame. It's pretty effective stuff. And so I guess what I'm getting at is I like that actress that lied. And to tell you the truth, the fact that she couldn't be underwater, I would have never really noticed that anyway.
No.
I
Why?
mean,
Apparently, it was that he couldn't get the shots that he wanted. He had to do a lot of like long shots. That's what he said. I don't know. But yeah, he was just kind of pissed at the deception. Yeah, what came through, because knowing that, then I watched it again. Really, I re-rented it just to reconfirm how dumb the way they solve it was, because I'm like, certainly I missed something. No, I didn't miss anything. But so yeah, I wanted to re-watch it now, knowing like, oh, what did it look like? And there were enough shots to where I was like, I would have never been like, that girl can barely go underwater.
right. Right.
But
Yeah. I
all
mean,
you need is 2 seconds, of a shot.
yeah.
So
And so just we touched on it a little bit earlier. This movie, what's really cool about not just the visuals themselves, but actually the inspiration pieces for these visuals. Because while I'm sure the director or the art director would love to take credit for all of it, there's very specific sequences and several of them that are directly inspired by, if not borderline copied from specific works of art.
yes,
Um, there's you've got H.R. Geiger, which a lot of your sci-fi and horror fans out there are going to be familiar with his work. You've got Odd Nerdrum, who kind of influenced that scene with the three women on the beach.
yeah,
That's really really interesting. And then of course there was
triplets.
a
They were triplets in that.
yeah, and then of course there's a lot of influence from, like we were talking about with music videos at the time, that sort of flavor of like the Nine Inch Nails videos and the Marilyn Manson videos. You can feel a lot of that in there as well. But yeah, there's the one scene that really stands out. I can't believe we haven't mentioned it yet. Is the horse scene,
Yeah,
um, where there's a beautiful horse standing. You get a gorgeous profile of it. It's in the king's subconscious. Jennifer Lopez has only just made her way into this world. There's these 6 panes of glass, and then bam, they all come down and slice right through the horse, so like succinctly that you don't even really realize what's happened at first until all of those sections separate from each other, and that you realize that the horse has been dissected or trisected or bisected,
right.
however the hell you say it, and split into pieces. And that is also driven by a specific artist that was popular for a while. I think his name was Damien Hirst. Was a British artist who worked a lot with animals and dissected animals and that sort of thing. But a really, really stunning shot, and that I think they made a fine choice to pull directly from some really powerful works of art. It translates to film super well.
Well, yeah, and the director even said, he's like, this is an opera. This
Yeah.
movie is an opera, and opera is not subtle. Like, show me a
No.
subtle opera, and I'll show you a shitty opera.
Yeah, that's so true.
Which
Yeah,
once I read that, and then I was like, okay, yes, like like all the pageantry and the costumes and the color, like, yes, it is such an opera. Like, I don't know why that never really hit with me before until I read that he said that.
no, it's a great way to illustrate it. And I don't think that there's a lot with this movie to hate. It might not be somebody's favorite movie, but I think that it's across the board super competent, and I think the performances are great. And of all people, for it to impress the hell out of, Roger Ebert gives 4 stars to this movie,
Yeah.
and says that it's one of the best films of that year. And I think he even had it, maybe even had it on the best films of the decade, maybe.
It's possible. He
But
had some interesting picks, man. Like, he loved Dark City. He said that was his best movie of that year. He likes the weird, the heady sci-fi, man.
Yeah, he loves Clockwork Orange. He loves Apocalypse Now. Yeah, I mean the guy, he was kind of hit or miss. I
Synecdoche,
mean,
New York. He said he put that in one of his best movies of the decade.
unfortunately for people like me, he hated slasher movies. Absolutely
That's true.
detested them. And but yeah, this is Roger Ebert's brand of horror, if you needed more convincing. So, and that's funny. Like, here we are doing a horror podcast, and I'm going to ask you this right now. What is this movie?
It's science fiction.
Science fiction. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Psychological. I would think it kind of more along the lines of like a psychological.
Yes, it's a science
thriller?
fiction psychological thriller. Yes.
Is it
Those
more
are
of
the
a,
two halves. You have your psychological thriller, which is finding the killer or finding the victim, and then the sci-fi is we can use the technique and go into your subconscious and talk to you.
Now, do you? So, would you call it? Because I just love it when movies are called thrillers. Because it is. I guess it is a kind of an offshoot. Can you imagine if there was? Imagine if there was a thriller podcast. Fucking pussies. But no, it is.
We've
I guess
covered every Ashley Judd movie from the 90s.
Perfect. Yes. Yeah. So I guess if you somehow Well, no, it's possible that you didn't see this movie. It's also possible that maybe somehow you didn't see Silence of the Lambs. If you think you
Yeah,
might
if
like,
you've never seen a movie with a serial killer in it, this is going to be great because it's going to be a two fresh concepts.
right? And yeah, I mean, those films are kind of if you like Silence of the Lambs, but you haven't seen The Cell, you'll probably like the flavor of this movie, I would say. So yeah, definitely, it gets a recommend from me
You
for sure.
recommend? All right. I say I recommend. It was not as engaging as I thought it would be. I did watch this a lot when it came out and like was on DVD. Like because it is visually stunning, so like that was perfect for my new DVD player, like whoa, look at the quality of this. It didn't hold up as well as I was hoping, but I had forgotten how awesome Vincent D'Onofrio is in it. I think that Vince Vaughn and Jennifer Lopez are good. I don't think their characters are interesting, but I think that they don't make them boring for as boring as they are. So I think they were very serviceable. I think Vinny D was fucking amazing. And what a snack. Like that scene where he's got his shirt off and he's by the tub. I was like, what? This is fat Vinny D'Onofrio? Come on.
Right? Yeah,
Forgot he looked like that.
yeah.
And one last thing before we wrap it up. I don't know if you knew this. I saw this looking at the character list. The forgettable cop, the blonde one no one cares about. His character, he was Detective Gordon Ramsay.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of an interesting.
Which Gordon
choice
Ramsay was
there.
not really a thing yet. He had been in that one, whatever that documentary was that kind of made his name, had come out like the year before. So I don't know if this was I loved that cooking documentary. I'm putting that guy, that guy's memorable. So who knows? Or if it was just coincidence. Okay. So that was 2000's The Cell. Man, culture took a real nosedive after in the 2000s. So at least we got this. This was the tail end of the 90s kind of thing. Next, we're going to go back to the basics. We've done a lot of newfangled cinema. We're going back now. Depending on where you live, Canada 84, US 85. We're going to do a movie I've never seen. Timmy's seen it, but not in a long time. The Mutilator. Which the tagline: by sword, by pick, by axe, bye bye.
Yes, one of my absolute favorite taglines of all time.
Yeah.
It's tied with that and the Lifts tagline, which is a movie about a killer elevator.
Elevator, yes.
Yeah.
I never saw that one either.
That tagline is take the stairs, for God's sake, take the stairs. It literally says that on the cover. It's great.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for listening. This has been Slumber Podcast Massacre with TNA. Please follow us on Instagram at Slumber Podcast Massacre. Our email is slumberpodcast@gmail.com. Please email us with any suggestions, comments. What do you want us to cover a movie? We obviously will do it. All you got to do is suggest it. Our Patreon is patreon.com/Slumber Podcast Massacre. A huge thanks to our Patreons for helping cover some of the costs of putting this fine podcast together. Just want to throw out thanks to Sarah Dooley for our theme song. Check out her new song and short film called My Party. Yeah, I think that about wraps.
And thank you, Mikey Z, for the recommendation.
Yes, thank you, Mikey, for the recommendation. Tim, do you got anything else to say about The Cell?
Well, I not so much about The Cell itself, but I just promise me that, when things have died down with the whole COVID thing and I come back over, that you will show me your masturbation machine.
I'll hook you up into it, bud.
Yeah, can't wait.
Bye, Timmy.
Bye.